this big, this important, by which I mean the Nigeria-Biafra War, you have to find ways to keep it a novel. That's important, but also so if you had a historian look at it, to have the historian give you a pass mark.
I've read in your biography that you started by doing medicine and pharmacy studies, and then you moved on to communication studies. How did that happen? Why? What inspired you to change your field?
Well, I grew up in Nigeria, the Nigerians here, and I think it's actually true for a lot of developing nations, that you're encouraged to become a doctor. So you do well in school, they say to you, you have to be a doctor. Nobody asks you whether you want to be a painter. And if you did say that you wanted to be a painter, they would say you were mad. So I did well in school and sort of was just automatically put in the science track. And I went along with it, and I remember thinking, this is what one does when one does well in school, one becomes a doctor. And I thought, what I really love to do is to write, and I thought, I'm going to become a doctor, and then I'll write. And, but I think it was, and so I went into the University of Nigeria, started to study medicine, and I was so bored. I would sit in class writing poetry at the back of my notebooks. And by the way, the poetry wasn't even very good, which, But it was also the sense in which, I was doing well. I was sort of, I would do the tests and get them all right. But it was boring. I had no interest in these things. And so what I did was I decided to flee the study of medicine. I thought, I really also did not like biology at all. I quite liked chemistry. And so I thought I'm going to do pharmacy instead. So that way I might be a bit more interested. I sort of liked the organic chemistry and drawing those things. And then I went to pharmacy, which, by the way, was a scandal because nobody left the study of medicine. People were desperate to get into the College of Medicine, and you get in, and then you want to leave. And I remember when my father, who's just a very lovely man, and I went to my parents and I said, I don't want to study medicine anymore, and this is not something that's done. And my father just looked at me and said, are you sure? And I said, yes, and he said, okay. And so he then went to help me to get out of medicine, and he says that he walked into the dean's office and said, my daughter wants to leave. And the dean said, what? And then my father said the dean then called for my file because he was convinced that something was wrong. Maybe he thought I had failed the course. And so he looks at the grades and he says, why? And my father said, this is our strange daughter. She wants to do something else. And so I went to pharmacy and did that for a year, and also was also bored. I mean, it was a bit better because chemistry was a bit more interesting to me, but I was just not interested. And I think there's a sense in which you start to think, and at the time I was going through a very melancholic stage. I was reading a lot of Russian fiction, and I started to think about life being short and one must, do what one loves. And so I thought, I'm not going to do this. I was 19, 18, and I had this grand sense of destiny, and I thought, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go off and do what I love, and it might be a disaster, but I'm going to be happy that I tried. And so I went to my parents again, and I said, I want to leave. My sister lived in the US at the time, and because I had been in the science track in Nigeria for so long, it was impossible to go to something that wasn't a science. I mean, I would have had to go back and take the entrance exams to university, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to leave as well. I sort of felt that I needed that distance. And so I said to my parents, I want to go to the US. My sister is there. I'm going to take the SATs. I'm going to get a scholarship, so you wouldn't have to worry about money. And we couldn't even afford it anyway. And I did, so that's what I did. My parents said, okay, if you can get a scholarship, then you can go. So I went off and I took the SATs and I got a scholarship and I left. And I really think I look back now at it and I realize it's really the best decision that I took. And of course I'm fortunate that the books did well. They might not have, but I would have been happy with my choice still. So this is, by the way, my little way of saying to everybody, do what you love. Sort of grab it and go for it and be the best you can be.
Can I ask a question? As a South African, I was quite struck by the way that Alana felt when she met Richard. The feeling, and he noticed the distrust in her eyes when she looked at him. And I thought that was quite a telling part of the South African narrative, and I wondered if you could elaborate on that at all.
I mean, but you have to remember there was also a sort of a complicated attraction between them.
Yes.
So it was a sort of there's repulse and attraction, repulse and attraction. And I think and Richard is a character in Half of the Yellow Sun. Richard is the Englishman who goes to Nigeria in search of art and then finds love. And Richard is a character about whom I have received the most emails from English people, who I think in some ways what Half of the Yellow Sun does, which I think a lot of fiction that says in